we founded EPEX many years ago, it would be good to reflect on what we've learned and really the philosophy of EPEX and, in some ways, what people get out of an EPEX course.
Yes, I think our attitude has evolved. I was conscious when we set up EPEX that we were not wanting to do a simple sort of chalk and talk exercise where people were being taught what to do. I think it's always been a matter of facilitating learning, and I think our attitude towards that has evolved into really quite a positive and quite distinctive philosophy.
I think it has. It's certainly something very different. And when we get feedback from the course, it often amazes me that people find it so enlightening. But I think we're beginning to understand why that is. I think one of the things that I see is it allows people to make mistakes in a very safe environment and learn from them. I think you learn as much from mistakes as you do from success.
Yes, I'm sure you do, probably more. And it was always said in large organisations that the most successful managers were those who'd left a string of extremely expensive failures behind them. It was much better to do that on a training course rather than in real life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you make your mistakes and you learn from yours and other people's mistakes, and it's done in a very friendly, casual way. I think it's participants get a lot from the multi-layered environment. Their learning comes from sort of teacher-type input, but then it comes from presentations they give themselves. It comes from facilitated discussion. It comes from coaching and mentoring of experienced trainers. And so it sort of reinforces over the course duration.
Yes, and there's a great diversity of knowledge in the training room. You and I each have 30 odd years, I guess, of oil company experience, but within a course of 20 or 30 people, there's probably 1,000 years or so of experience. And I know that from my own point of view, sometimes I've been asked a question when presenting, and I've not known the answer, but I've not felt threatened by this, because I know that somebody in the room will know the answer, and indeed they almost always do, and you can just defer to them and rejoice that there's knowledge in the room that you don't need to have yourself.
Oh, indeed, I think it's a very important message for executives. They don't need to know all the answers. The answers are out there. It's really about the experience needed to make rational judgments over time. And I think actually one of the things that has been poor in our industry is living with the consequences of failure. Sometimes people move around with the time lags in our industry. Yes. But actually what EPEX shows you is you need to live with the consequences of failure because it's important. It affects the way your business, the future of your business.
Yes, and the accelerated timescale means that it catches up with you. You've not got 15 years to make your escape. You know, the 15 years or 10 years is telescoped down into just a few days. And so your mistakes do catch up with you, and your successes.
Absolutely. Whilst it might only last a few days, I think it does give you a feeling of what executive management is like at the top levels of a company, and get to be able to get your hands on the steering wheel for a while and just feel what it's like.
Yes. For me, that's a big part of it, understanding what drives and motivates the senior management team who are organising the whole thing. But I go further than that. I think the really valuable thing to the delegates is, even if they're not destined for high office and being chief executive, whatever their role is in the organisation, it's extremely good and healthy for them to understand what lies immediately outside their own compartmentalised part of the organisation, but also what lies over the full extent of the organisation, and how the whole organisation works together towards achieving a particular aim. It enables a kind of alignment which is not anymore a command and control imposed alignment.
Absolutely. So not only do they get that umbrella vision, but they also understand, they see the full life cycle of an asset. So it really gives you a sort of depth and breadth of what the upstream oil and gas business looks like.
Yes, in dialogue with companies, leading companies, very often I find myself frustrated by the skills matrix approach towards training. That an individual has to have training in this discipline, this competence, this skill, etc. And when he's got, he or she has tick boxes in all 10 of those, they're then ready to move to the next level. It seems sort of disconnected because there's no kind of overarching course, apart from ours, which enables you to understand how all those skills integrate and interact, and how the whole organisation interacts.
Yeah, and in fact, probably a key output of that is the importance of integrated decision making, where you bring in other functions in terms of the key decisions you need to take, and not taking decisions just in a silo.
Yes, that's right. It seems to me that in the old days it might have been possible for a large organisation to have carved out a kind of niche where it knows how to operate, knows how to do things, has people specifically trained in those roles, and they just do those roles endlessly and do them very well, and the whole organisation works very well. I think those days are gone. Business life is less like a game of chess now and much more like a fast video game. And people have to learn to respond and do so almost autonomously without feeling the need to get guidance all the time. They need to be sort of self-guiding.
Yeah, the days of throwing your report over the partition to the next function, those days have definitely gone. Mm-hmm. I think something that participants get out of it is the real linkage between strategy, planning and performance management. Now, individuals often would work in one of those areas, but not always actually see how all those three really combine through the life cycle of decision making.
Yes, that's right. And I suppose to take the analogy further, in the old days, and indeed still in some organisations, you find yourself with your own performance contract in isolation, your own kind of objectives, but have no coherent picture of how your own objectives contribute to the overall purpose of the organisation. There's a kind of cascade of mission and strategy and planning and individual objectives. And if you can understand the context you're in, I think that enables you to work much more effectively.
Yeah. You're very hot on relationships as well.
As I go on further in life, I start to realise that actually relationships are almost the only thing that matters. And that's a very big part of the EPEX course. The personification of ministers who have enormous influence, as in the real world, to hold sway over the fortunes of a company. And I've been told several times as a minister, walking into a company office, to go away, can't you see we're busy? And that has a pretty bad effect on their interest in that country, I can tell you.
Indeed. Well, there's a lot you get from an EPEX course, and I think we're only just beginning to understand why it's so popular. I listened to a very interesting talk of some of the top universities in the UK and the US, Harvard, Stanford, Cambridge, Oxford, about the future of teaching and learning, and it's very much moving towards learning and facilitated learning. The content you can increasingly get online, but what you don't get online is that sort of experiential judgment that you get by discussing, arguing back and forth. And the big universities are moving, they're wondering what to do with their impressive establishments, and that's what I think their direction is. And I think EPEX is absolutely tuned into that philosophy of learning.
Yes, and I've always been conscious that not everyone learns in the same way that I do. I happen to work quite visually. Some people work in terms of abstract concepts, some people like to be verbal about things, some people just like to get in and do it and try it and see what happens. I like to think that we hit most of those buttons by providing a challenge to do something, that is manage a company, but then there's a vast resource of videos, of things to read, people to talk to, the training staff who can help with it. So you can try it, you can read it, you can listen to it, you can do it. All those buttons can be pressed according to the needs of the individual who's learning. So yeah. It's not a single kind of format that we're imposing.
Indeed. You certainly have the ability sort of to do, learn, do, or to analyse, and then do. Yeah. So you can see the differences of approach. Well, I think we've got a great leadership tool here for executives, for young executives, for young managers. And well, I'm very proud of what has been created. And thanks to you, Tim, for driving this forward.
Thank you for staying with us.
Okay.